The car did not arrive at a home. It descended into one. The city disappeared behind her in fragments of reflected light as the vehicle curved down a private ramp hidden beneath the monumental geometry of Arthur Vance's residential tower. The glass and steel structure above had looked almost unreal from the street, too pristine, too vertical, too perfectly illuminated to belong to the same world as traffic, rainwater, and ordinary human fatigue. But down here, beneath it, the illusion of civilization fell away completely. The underground garage was not a garage. It was a vault, a cathedral built for machines. White light flooded every surface with surgical precision, turning polished concrete and black stone into something almost sterile. There was no trace of daylight, no trace of weather, no trace of life beyond the faint mechanical hum of hidden systems breathing through the walls. The cars parked in precise alignment looked less like vehicles and more like curated artifacts, cold, expensive bodies of glass and metal resting beneath immaculate light, as if they had never known dirt, speed, or accident. Nothing here felt used. Everything felt preserved, controlled, untouched by human mess. Even sound behaved differently in that place. The engine softened into silence. The door locks released with a quiet click. Then stillness. No shouting, no traffic, no footsteps from strangers, no music leaking from neighboring apartments, no reminder that other people existed beyond this subterranean chamber of luxury and surveillance. The driver stepped out first. She watched his silhouette move past the tinted glass, dark and composed, before her door opened from the outside. He said nothing. Of course he said nothing. By now, his silence no longer felt like professionalism. It felt ideological, a rule of the world she had entered. Arthur's world did not explain itself. It simply arranged itself around her and expected obedience. Cool artificial air touched her skin as she stepped out of the car. The crimson dress seemed almost violent under the white lights. Up on the street, it had looked elegant, deliberate, dangerous. Down here, reflected against stone and steel and pale illumination, it looked different. Raw. Too bright. Too alive. Like a wound carried into a sterile operating room. A stain moving through a kingdom built on pristine surfaces. The driver closed the door behind her with measured care, then gestured toward a corridor at the far end of the garage. No words. Only direction. She followed. Her heels struck the floor with a sound that seemed to travel too far. Sharp. Isolated. Every step announced her presence to a place that did not need noise to observe. Cameras were everywhere, though she could not always see them. She felt them in the angles of the ceiling, in the black seamless corners, in the invisible logic of the architecture. Surveillance here was not crude. It was elegant. Embedded. The kind that did not need to reveal itself to be effective. The corridor narrowed as they walked, the monumental openness of the garage giving way to a passage lined in dark glass and brushed metal. Light strips ran along the base of the walls, turning the floor into a path of quiet radiance. It should have felt grand. It should have felt luxurious. Instead, it felt suffocating. Not because the space was small, because it was deliberate. There was no randomness anywhere, no imperfection. No sign of life left behind by accident. No crooked picture frame, no fingerprint on glass, no coffee stain, no discarded object proving that someone here lived instead of ruled. The absence of disorder became its own form of pressure. At the end of the corridor, the elevator waited. Its doors were transparent. Not mirrored. Not metallic. Transparent. For a second, she stood still, unable to move closer. The structure enclosing it was all glass, a vertical capsule suspended against the interior spine of the building. Beyond it, through layers of engineered transparency, the city shimmered at a distance, cold blue light, geometric windows, ribbons of headlights threading through the dark. The elevator looked elegant in the way expensive traps often do, beautiful enough to make refusal seem irrational. The driver stepped aside. Again, not a word. As if his role ended at delivery. As if what happened after this belonged to another tier of Arthur's will. She entered the glass enclosure alone. The doors slid shut behind her with barely a sound. And suddenly there was nowhere to look except outward. Or inward. Both felt dangerous. The elevator began to rise. At first, the motion was so smooth, she only noticed it in her stomach. A subtle pull. Then gravity shifted more decisively beneath her ribs, a quiet downward pressure as the floor carried her upward through the tower. The garage dropped away beneath her in perfect symmetry, white light shrinking, black machines becoming abstract shapes, architecture reducing itself into pattern. Then the city opened. Not all at once. Slowly. Vertically. Floor by floor, the world unfolded beneath her like a map losing its humanity. Streets became lines of light. Buildings became cold, illuminated blocks. Windows became glittering data points suspended in the night. The higher she rose, the less the city resembled a place where people lived, suffered, loved, lied, and survived. It became an organism of light and geometry. Vast. Indifferent. Beautiful in a way that made the human body feel inconveniently fragile. She stood in the middle of the transparent cabin and felt, with sudden and suffocating clarity, that she was no longer ascending through a building. She was being lifted into a throne room, into a vertical kingdom built above the ordinary world. The sensation should have felt expansive. Instead, it felt claustrophobic. The glass around her offered visibility without freedom. She could see everything, but touch nothing. The city stretched in all directions, but she was sealed inside a moving cage. A bird suspended in transparent luxury, rising higher and higher while gravity reminded her that falling was always possible. Her reflection emerged in the glass as the exterior lights deepened. At first it was faint, just a ghost laid over the skyline. Then clearer. And she looked. Really looked. The woman staring back at her did not resemble the one who used to fumble with grocery bags, fall asleep over spreadsheets, or laugh tiredly at midnight with cold coffee in hand. This woman stood upright in crimson silk beneath engineered light, carried upward through a private tower because a signature had made her transferable. The dress cut through the blue glow of the city like blood under ice. A wound against glass. A mark impossible to mistake. She lifted one hand, almost unconsciously, and touched the side of the elevator. The glass was cool beneath her fingertips. Solid. Perfect. Transparent enough to promise openness, strong enough to deny it. She thought, absurdly, of museums again. Of precious things displayed where they could be admired, studied, protected, and never truly free. Her throat tightened. Her father. The thought came without warning, more painful for how quickly it rearranged everything. Was he safe now? Not theoretically. Not legally. Actually safe. Breathing easier somewhere tonight because of what she had done? Sleeping without fear of ruin at the edge of his bed? Had the phone call been enough? Was relief somewhere already unfolding in another part of the city while she rose toward this silent kingdom? Or had she only exchanged one form of danger for another, moving the threat from his life into her own with the kind of transaction no one ever fully understands until it is too late? She closed her eyes for one brief second. Was it worth it? The question had no mercy in it now. No romance. No drama. Just the brutal simplicity of consequence. If he was truly safe, if the pressure on his chest had lifted, if his future had been pulled back from collapse, then perhaps yes. But the word did not come cleanly, because she could already feel the cost settling into her body. This tower, this silence, this immaculate ascent, this sense that she was not arriving anywhere so much as surrendering to a structure that had been waiting for her all along. She had traded her world for this. Not just her apartment, her routines, her familiar streets. Something deeper. Scale. Noise. Choice. The right to belong horizontally among other lives. Now everything around her was vertical, hierarchical, elevated, ordered by access and height and invisible permission. Down there was the city, messy, imperfect, ordinary, alive. Up here was Arthur's domain, removed from weather and friction, suspended so high above the rest of the world it could pretend to be untouched by it. The elevator kept rising. The numbers changed silently. The night outside darkened further, and with it her reflection sharpened until it nearly replaced the city beyond. For one disorienting second, she seemed to be floating in blackness, the skyline broken around her, her own image suspended against the void. A stranger in red. A figure carried by forces already decided. Then the elevator slowed. A soft deceleration. Barely perceptible, yet enough to tighten every muscle in her body. Her pulse shifted. The air felt different. Not physically. Instinctively. The way animals seem to know when they are approaching the center of another predator's territory. A single tone sounded. Quiet. Refined. Final. The elevator stopped. For one suspended heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the doors opened. Warmth reached her first, not temperature exactly, but atmosphere. A darker air. Richer. Human. Lived in by power. Then scent. Sandalwood. Expensive whiskey. Something smooth and aged and unmistakably masculine, threaded through with the quiet burn of wealth so old it no longer needed to announce itself loudly. It hit her before the room itself fully came into focus. And instantly she knew. He was near. Not because she saw him. Because the space had already changed around his presence. The foyer beyond the elevator was vast, hushed, and impossibly refined stone, glass, shadow, soft amber light falling across clean lines and monumental surfaces. It looked less like the entrance to a home and more like the threshold of a private empire. Yet all of that registered only after the scent, after the instinct, after the realization that somewhere just beyond this first immaculate room was the man whose gravity had already begun pulling her life out of its former orbit. She did not step out immediately. For one breath, she remained inside the transparent cage, staring into the foyer as though the elevator had delivered her not to a residence, but to a verdict. Then, slowly, she crossed the threshold, and the doors whispered shut behind her. And then, she realized something. This wasn't where her story continued. This was where it truly began.